Hey guys, tonight we're sailing somewhere warm, vast and older than maps. You're standing barefoot on a beach under a velvet sky so crowded with stars, it looks like spilled sugar. The air smells like salt and wood smoke, and a low hum rolls through the palms, the kind of rhythm that makes you want to breathe slower. Around you, people move quietly, tying bundles, adjusting sails, speaking in low tones that almost blend with the surf. You are about to leave everything you know behind, in a canoe that seems impossibly small for what lies ahead. You probably won't survive this, at least not without the patience of a rock and the stomach of a god. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is there right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand beneath your toes is cool, fine, and laced with crushed coral. The ocean ahead is darker than ink, but not empty. It's alive with pulse and memory. You watch the navigators, called wayfinders, move like dancers between piles of supplies, coconuts, taro, gourds of fresh water. Each has a specific rhythm to their tasks, a kind of sleepy grace that makes even tying a knot look ceremonial. You can hear the creak of Senate rope as it's pulled tight, and somewhere a baby cries softly, as if protesting that long voyages were not its idea. One of the elders, his hair silver and his shoulders broad from years at sea, crouches by a canoe hull. He places his palm against it, murmuring to himself. You ask, quietly, what he's saying. Someone answers that he's greeting the canoe, thanking it for carrying them. Polynesian voyagers believed their canoes were living things, carved from trees that once stood proud and tall. The spirit of that tree would, hopefully, keep them steady out on the waves. It's the kind of idea modern engineers might raise an eyebrow, but then modern engineers didn't cross an ocean without GPS. The sky tonight is thick with constellations. Orion crouches near the horizon, but here he's not Orion. He's Totoru. To your left is the Southern Cross, the ever-faithful compass of the Southern Pacific. Every bright star has a story attached. Romances, rivalries, moral lessons disguised as astronomy. Historians still argue whether Polynesians first learned these star paths from one single ancestral homeland, or whether the knowledge developed independently across islands. But to the wayfinders, that debate would sound like a land dweller's problem. They simply know the stars the way you know your own street. The canoes are double-hulled, two sleek wooden bodies lashed together by rope and patience. Between them lies a deck where everything from chickens to dreams will ride. Each hull is balanced by the other, like two lungs drawing the same breath. You run a hand along the polished wood. It feels both ancient and newly alive. One of the apprentices grins at you and says she will breathe with the ocean. You pretend you understand, but you really don't yet. A slow chant begins, low and hypnotic. It's not for the audience, not for tourists or show. It's for the sea itself, a way of telling the waves, we're coming, please be kind. The melody rises and falls with the tide, and it feels oddly familiar, as if you've always known it. Maybe that's because the rhythm of paddling and breathing, heartbeats and waves, are all cousins. You find yourself swaying slightly, eyes half closed, as though your body recognizes something your mind forgot. Then, suddenly, you are part of the preparations. You help push the canoe forward, feeling the give of wet sand under your feet. Someone shouts softly, a cue you don't understand, and the hull slides into the surf. The water is shockingly warm. When you climb aboard, the entire vessel shifts beneath you. Alive, responsive, the elder nods. Conch shell blows, and the night splits open with sound, paddles striking water in perfect rhythm. For a while, all you can hear is that splash, pull, breath. The stars tilt overhead as the island grows smaller behind you. Torches along the shore wink out one by one until there's only open sea. You glance back once, half expecting regret to bite, but it doesn't. Instead, there's an odd calm, like the hush after a long sigh. You settle into the gentle roll of the ocean. Someone hands you a strip of dried fish. It's chewy and suspiciously salty. But after a few minutes, you're too mesmerized by the rhythm to care. The night air feels endless. Every few strokes, the elder murmurs a direction. He doesn't look at a map. His eyes are on the horizon, or perhaps beyond it. He's reading something invisible. The tilt of the swells, the shimmer of the stars, the pattern of foam against the hull. It's easy to forget, floating here, that these voyages once connected nearly every island from Hawaii to Aotearoa to Rapa Nui, an expanse bigger than Europe. You're gliding through a web of routes older than any empire, guided only by human memory. Modern scholars have confirmed this. Through DNA and linguistic patterns, we know these navigators spread a shared culture across half the planet's ocean. The mainstream fact feels astonishing enough. But then you hear the stranger one. There's a legend that says some wayfinders could smell land. Not metaphorically, they claimed they could sense the faint change in ocean scent, hours before any bird or wave revealed it. Science hasn't quite caught up with that. Historians still argue whether this was poetic exaggeration, or whether the brain, tuned by years of voyaging, could really detect subtle shifts in air chemistry. You lean forward, inhaling. All you smell is salt, wood, and a hint of coconut oil. Maybe you're not there yet. As the hours pass, the paddling slows. The elder tells you to lie back, to feel the ocean's pulse through the hull. You obey. The waves nudge the canoe like a rocking cradle. The stars above begin to blur slightly, as though you're seeing them through tears. But no, it's sleep, soft and steady, rising like the tide. Somewhere, someone hums the earlier chant again, slower this time. It threads through your thoughts until your mind drifts like driftwood, unanchored and perfectly still. Dawn comes quietly, as if it's been walking on tiptoe across the horizon. You wake to find the canoe rocking gently in the long, lazy swells of the open Pacific. The sun is a dull copper disk, rising through mist, and the light catches the salt crystals on your skin until you look faintly gilded. The ocean stretches forever in every direction, and for a moment, your brain refuses to believe that land still exists anywhere. The elder beside you, the same one who greeted the canoe the night before, is already awake. He's inspecting the rigging and murmuring to a young apprentice, correcting hand positions, not angles. The canoe creaks in the morning heat, but it sounds content, like an old animal stretching its bones. You realize now what the elder meant about the canoe. Breathing. Each plank and lash has give and rhythm. The two hulls rise and fall alternately, pulling air through the lattice of decking, releasing it again in sighs that sound almost human. You rest your ear against the wood and swear you can hear a faint heartbeat, or maybe it's your own, sensing with the sea. These vessels, called waka, vaka, wa'a, or canoe, depending on which island you ask, were masterpieces of engineering long before the word engineering sailed west. They were double-hulled because stability meant survival. And in a world of waves taller than buildings, survival was a polite suggestion, not a guarantee. Each hull was carved from giant breadfruit or tamanu trees, stitched together with coconut fiber rope called sene. Not a single nail or metal fitting held them, yet they could last decades if treated right. A mainstream fact, and one historians rarely argue about. Polynesian voyagers reached nearly every habitable island in the Pacific centuries before European ships ever appeared. They didn't drift by accident. They navigated deliberately, with a mastery that astonished later explorers. Captain Cook, for instance, once admitted his own crew could hardly hope to equal the navigational skill of the Tahitian wayfinder Tupaia. But there's a stranger tidbit you don't read in textbooks. Some islanders believed each canoe had its own breath spirit, a fragment of divine air trapped within it. If the canoe was mistreated, loaded unevenly, left to rot or insulted, it could sulk or even turn unlucky. Sailors would refuse to board a grumpy canoe until it had been appeased with song. You imagine trying that line with an airline gate agent. "Sorry, can't board. My plane's in a mood tonight." The elder notices your small smile and asks if the canoe has told you anything yet. You stammer something about the heartbeat. He nods as if that's the most reasonable thing in the world. "She's welcoming you," he says. "Or testing you. Sometimes both." The air smells of wet rope and sun-warmed wood. You help tighten one of the cross lashings, your fingers clumsy next to the sure hands of the crew. Every knot feels alive, slightly flexing with the waves. It's hard not to anthropomorphize the whole contraption. The hull's like legs, the sail its lungs, the mast its spine. The double hull design, you learn, allowed it to dance between wave crests instead of punching through them, saving both energy and lives. Modern hydrodynamics later proved the principle. But for these sailors, it was intuitive. A conversation with water, not a battle. The elder gestures toward the outrigger booms, explaining that they act like the canoe's arms, balancing against the weight of cargo and the tilt of the wind. "A canoe that listens," he says, "never overturns." It sounds like good advice for people too. By mid-morning, the ocean's mood changes. The swell grows long and slow, each wave like a giant sleeping creature rolling beneath you. The navigator, sitting cross-legged near the stern, studies the patterns of foam left in the wake. He runs a hand through the water, closes his eyes, and mutters a few syllables. It's not magic. Not exactly. It's data collection, pre-Google edition. He explains that waves don't just move. They carry signatures from distant places. A swell coming from the northeast might whisper of a storm thousands of kilometers away. A faint cross ripple from the southwest could mean land reflecting the current. The canoes, he says, are built to respond, to breathe those whispers through their hulls. When you listen carefully enough, you can feel the change beneath your spine. You try. You lie down on the deck, close your eyes, and feel the push and pull. After a while, it's like sensing someone tapping from under the floorboards. You start to detect the difference between small, sharp waves and the larger, slower pulse of ocean swells. It's hypnotic, soothing. You could almost sleep, if not for the occasional splash of seawater that hits your ear like a wet alarm clock. Historians still argue whether ancient builders intentionally tuned their canoes to these wave frequencies, or whether it was just happy coincidence. Either way, the effect is undeniable. These vessels hum in sympathy with the sea. One modern sailor once described being aboard as riding inside a heartbeat. You nod unconsciously, because yes, that's exactly what it feels like. Lunch, or what passes for it, is shared around noon. The food is simple: taro mashed with coconut, slices of dried fish, a little salt. Someone passes you a cup made from half a gourd, filled with rainwater collected overnight. You drink, and the taste is faintly smoky from the wooden catch basin. Smoked rain, you joke. The apprentice laughs. We call it lucky rain, he says. It means the ocean approves. When the wind picks up, the crew unfurls the triangular sail. It fills instantly, snapping once, then drawing taut. The canoe leans slightly and begins to slice the water like a blade through silk. You grip the side, half in awe, half in mild terror, as the speed increases. The hulls hiss, the ropes sing. For a few exhilarating minutes, you're flying over the surface of the ocean, suspended between sky and deep blue. The elder chuckles at your white-knuckled grip. She's not angry, he says. She's happy. You loosen your hands, trying to match the calm faces around you. They look utterly at home, as if born here, half human, half tide. Evening creeps up softly. The sun lowers, staining the horizon with pinks and ambers. The crew prepares to reef the sail, slowing the canoe into a gentle drift. The air cools. Someone hums again. That same wordless tune from last night. You feel your muscles unclench. The elder sits beside you, and without looking up, says, "Every voyage begins twice. Once on the land, once on the sea." The canoe's first breath decides if both will meet again. You're not entirely sure what he means, but it sounds profound enough that you nod solemnly. As the stars begin to appear again, those familiar pinpricks of light, you realize that this canoe, this breathing wooden creature, is both vessel and teacher. It moves not just through water, but through centuries of memory. It's strange and comforting, knowing that every plank beneath you once stood in a forest, once drank rain, once knew the same wind you now feel. And as the darkness settles, the canoe exhales once more, a long, low creak, and the ocean answers in rhythm. Together, they breathe. Night settles again, as it always does out here. Not with a sudden switch, but with a slow dimming, like someone lowering the world's brightness setting. You lie on the deck of the canoe, staring up as the stars begin to multiply. At first, you recognize a few: Orion, the Southern Cross, maybe the Pleiades. But soon, there are too many to name, and your brain gives up trying. The sky becomes an overwhelming, luminous dome, alive with movement. Every second, the Earth's rotation shifts the constellations just a hair, like beads sliding along a giant abacus. The elder gestures for you to sit beside him. "Tonight," he says, "you learn the grammar of the sky." His voice is low, meant not to startle the waves. Around him, apprentices settle cross-legged, eyes lifted. You mimic them, trying to still the restless tourist part of your brain that wants to check the time or take a selfie. There's no Wi-Fi out here, only starlight, arguably a better connection. He points to a bright star rising near the horizon. "That is Hoklelia, the star of joy," he says. "When it rises here, it tells us our latitude, our home line." He traces with his finger the arc of its path. "We sail under this. We know who we are." You realize that for these navigators, astronomy isn't just navigation. It's identity. The sky is a family tree, each star a relative whispering directions. A mainstream historical fact slips quietly into your mind. The Polynesian star compass is one of the most sophisticated, non-instrument navigation systems ever devised. Instead of cardinal points, it divides the horizon into dozens of named rising and setting positions for specific stars. Each navigator memorized hundreds, perhaps thousands, of star paths, mental highways that stretched across the ocean. To master them was to hold an invisible atlas in your head. The elder begins to hum softly, a rhythmic chant that repeats certain star names in patterns. You realize the melody itself is mnemonic. It's education, disguised as song. You hum along, feeling the syllables vibrate against your teeth. Hoklea, H anaya kamalama, ayake ali, o kona aikalewa. They sound like poetry because they are. Every sound corresponds to a point on the horizon. Every rise and fall of the melody mimics the motion of the stars. Historians still argue, the elder says with a grin, about whether we sailed by stars or by memory of the stars. He taps his temple. Same thing. The apprentices laugh quietly. You do too, though part of you wonders how anyone could remember so many constellations without ever writing them down. Your brain struggles to recall even your online passwords. Then he draws your attention to something stranger. The dark shapes between stars. Those, he says, are as important as the bright ones. He points to a black streak in the Milky Way, an absence of light. That is the eel who swallowed starlight. He tells us when the seasons turn. You blink. You've never thought of darkness as information. But here, voids are as meaningful as points of light. You feel the canoe sway gently as the ocean joins the lesson. The elder asks everyone to close their eyes and describe what direction they think the canoe is pointing. Just from the feel of the waves and wind. You guess wrong. He chuckles kindly. You listen with your eyes too much, he says. Tonight, you listen with your spine. You lie back, letting the hull press against you, and gradually begin to sense subtle shifts. The roll of a side wave, the lift of the bow when a longer swell passes beneath. It's like learning a language of taps and pushes. Each island, the elder explains, has its own heartbeat. When you know that rhythm, you can find it again. To keep you awake, barely, he tells a small joke. Own student once said he could find his home island because it called his name. I told him it was just the wind asking who he was. The crew chuckles sleepily. Out here, humor arrives in whispers. Another fact emerges between waves of quiet. Star navigation wasn't just about direction. It tracked time too. The Polynesian lunar calendar followed both stars and tides. Voyagers could predict not only where they were, but when certain fish would spawn, when birds would migrate, when storms might rise. Navigation, farming, and survival were all parts of one cosmic spreadsheet, maintained entirely in human memory. But here comes the quirky part. Some navigators claimed they could hear stars. Not metaphorically. They described a faint hum in the sky, as if light itself sang. Scientists would later dismiss it as imagination or tinnitus, though modern physics admits stars do emit frequencies far below human hearing. So maybe they were just a few centuries ahead of the research. You lie still, listening, half convinced you can catch a whisper in the static of the night. As the lesson continues, you notice how time stretches differently at sea. Each star that rises feels like a paragraph in an unending story. The Milky Way arches overhead, shimmering like spilled milk across obsidian glass. The crew falls into a soft murmur, repeating the star names in sequence. North, east, south, west. Each tone rising, falling, folding over itself. You start to drift, not from fatigue, but from rhythm. The elder notices your drooping eyelids and smiles. The first thing every navigator learns, he says, is not the stars, but patience. The sky moves whether you look or not. You take that as permission and let your eyes close halfway. The world becomes texture and temperature. The damp breeze, the salt grit, the faint stickiness of sweat on wood. The stars blur into ribbons of silver as the canoe slides forward, obedient to invisible grammar. Then, from nowhere, a small cloud drifts across the moon. Its edge glows faintly, and you realize how perfectly the light reveals the curvature of the sail. The elder follows your gaze. That shape, he whispers, is how we reread distance. He explains that when clouds gather in certain formations, especially flat-bottomed ones, they hint at warm air rising from islands below. It's a preview of land, hours or even days away. You make a note in your mind. The sky doesn't just hold stars. It leaks secrets about the sea. A single puff of vapor could mean the difference between discovery and drifting forever. It's humbling. You think of how you once got lost in a shopping mall parking lot, and you quietly apologize to the ancestors. At last, the elder claps his hands softly. Enough. The sky has spoken. The chant fades, replaced by the sound of paddles dipping gently. The stars continue their endless, indifferent wheel above, but you feel oddly comforted. You may never memorize their language, but for tonight, you understand the feeling of it. A slow, calm conversation between human and universe. You roll onto your side, using a coil of rope as a pillow. Canoe sighs beneath you, a long exhale. Somewhere off the port bow, a meteor streaks downward and dies in silence. Another traveler, someone murmurs. You smile at that. Yes, another traveler, just going home. Morning returns with a shimmering glaze on the water, sunlight laying itself over the waves like a silk sheet. You wake to the sound of low conversation and the occasional splash of a paddle testing the current. The horizon looks the same in every direction. No islands, no ships, just a vast and living plain of blue. You stretch, bones cracking gently, and watch the navigator crouched near the edge of the canoe. He's staring not at the sky this time, but at the sea's surface, so intent that he barely blinks. You edge closer, careful not to unbalance the hull. What are you seeing? You whisper. The road, he says simply. The sea shows us where to go. You squint, but the only thing you can make out are waves. Long ones, short ones, rippling and intersecting. To you, it looks like chaos. To him, it's geometry. He gestures for you to close your eyes and kneel. You do, hesitantly, and he guides your palms onto the deck planks. Feel, he says. The sea always talks first. The wood vibrates faintly under your hands. Slow pulses that feel almost like breathing. You sit still and start to sense something deeper. An undertone beneath the visible swell. Long, slow waves rolling from one direction, and sharper, smaller ones crossing from another. The canoe rocks in their overlap. This, he murmurs, is the language of waves. It's the secret art of wave piloting, one of the oldest and most mysterious techniques in Polynesian navigation. The mainstream historical fact is clear enough. Skilled navigators could steer thousands of kilometers by reading the motion of the ocean alone, without stars, maps, or instruments. When clouds covered the sky, when storms erased every visible cue, the sea still spoke, and they understood. But the details of how they did it remain partly a mystery. Historians still argue whether the knowledge was transmitted through systematic training or through an almost mystical sensory awareness, an embodied map etched into the nervous system. Some researchers even suggest that decades of sea travel rewired the brain, allowing navigators to perceive minute changes in acceleration and rhythm the way you sense when your car drifts slightly out of lane. You keep your eyes closed as the navigator narrates what he feels. There is a long swell from the east, he says. That's our father current. The short waves from the south. Those come from a storm 3 days old. Hear them argue. The louder voice wins. You can't help smiling. He talks about waves like family members gossiping over dinner. Then he places a small stick in the water, letting it float beside the canoe. It drifts, twists, and finally settles at an angle. "See that?" he says. The swell pushes east to west, but the wind whispers north to south. Between them, there is a path. He calls this path the veins of the ocean. Narrow corridors where waves cancel or reinforce one another. Follow one long enough, and you'll meet land. He invites you to lie flat on your stomach, ear pressed to the deck. You obey, feeling the hull's subtle tremors. After a minute or two, you begin to notice patterns. Long, rhythmic rises followed by faint lulls, like listening to a slow drum beat under a faster tune. "That's the cross swell," he says. "The one that tells you there's something reflecting the waves back. An island, a reef, maybe even another canoe. It's dizzying and beautiful. The world you thought of as silent is suddenly full of signals." There's even a quirky tidbit he shares with a grin. Old navigators say sharks follow the crosswell too. They like where two songs of the sea meet. He pauses, eyes twinkling. "So if the canoe feels bumpy, and you see fins, don't panic. They're just listening." You laugh nervously, partly comforted, partly checking the water a little too often. As the day warms, the navigator teaches you to read surface patterns visually. He points out how the sunlight glints differently depending on the angle of the swell, tiny bright lines that form moving grids. When two sets of waves intersect, their crests create diamond shapes, which slowly drift across the ocean's face. "That's where you find calm water," he says. "The diamonds are sleeping spots. You will watch for hours, mesmerized. Occasionally, a flying fish darts across the surface, wings catching the light like shards of glass. One lands briefly on the deck, flapping indignantly before an apprentice tosses it back into the sea. Even fish forget where they're going sometimes," he jokes. Midday brings a lull. The air grows thick, the sun pressing down like a warm hand. The canoe slows, and the crew begins mending ropes or napping in whatever shade they can find. You stay awake, hypnotized by the shifting water. It's never still, never quiet. Every pulse feels like a message, soft syllables of salt and motion. The elder joins you and sits cross-legged, dipping his fingers into the water. "Each island has its echo," he says. "Even far away, the waves remember." When you listen long enough, you feel the echo push back. He explains how certain trained navigators could sense when they were nearing land, because the pattern of swells would subtly thicken, as if bouncing off something invisible. He tells you about the Marshallese stick charts, those delicate lattice maps made of coconut fiber and shells that recorded wave patterns. Historians once dismissed them as symbolic, but modern experiments proved they actually work. The curved sticks represent prevailing swells, the intersections mark where waves cross, and the tiny shells show island positions. They're not charts in the Western sense. They're tactile memory aids, like snapshots of how the ocean feels. You ask whether the Polynesians use similar charts. The elder shakes his head. "No," he says softly. "We build the chart here." He taps his chest. "And here." He taps his head. "We carry it wherever we go." There's a quiet dignity in that, a confidence built on generations of observation. The ocean, once terrifying, becomes a library you can read by touch. A lazy afternoon breeze ruffles the sail. The canoe begins to move again, guided by invisible tracks. The navigator adjusts the steering paddle slightly, not looking at the horizon but at the waveforms sliding beneath the hull. He hums a low tone, matching the rhythm. The sound seeps into your bones. Soon you find yourself humming too, though you don't know why. It just feels right. Maybe that's part of it. The harmony between body and sea, between human intention and natural rhythm. The waves, it seems, like to be sung to. Later, as dusk falls, the water takes on a molten copper hue. The swell slows, smoothing itself into long, lazy rolls. You can feel the canoe gliding more easily now, as if the sea itself were saying, "Yes, this way." The elder stands, his silhouette framed by orange light. "The ocean does not hide its roads," he says. "Only impatient people fail to see them." He looks down at you, smiling faintly. "But maybe you are learning to listen." You grin sleepily. You don't feel like a tourist anymore. You feel like an apprentice to something enormous and kind. The sea breathes beneath you, steady and endless, and you breathe with it, as though both of you share the same lungs. The next morning, you wake to a chorus of seabirds. They sound impossibly close, like gossiping neighbors perched just outside your window. When you sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes, you spot them. White terns, darting low across the water, their wings flashing silver in the morning light. The crew murmurs softly, pointing. The elder doesn't smile, but his eyes brighten. "Land is near," he says simply. You look around, half expecting to see a green coastline waiting like an answered prayer. There's nothing. Only the same glittering sea, stretching forever. Still, the crew's energy changes. They paddle with quiet confidence now, eyes scanning the horizon for patterns invisible to you. The ocean feels different, somehow. Its rhythm slightly busier, as if the waves themselves know something is coming. This is the ancient art of bird navigation, another layer in the grand conversation between voyagers and nature. The mainstream historical fact is easy to grasp. Polynesian navigators used the flight patterns of seabirds to locate islands long before land appeared. Certain species, like noddies or frigate birds, forage at sea by day, but return to land every night to roost. By watching which direction the birds flew at dawn or dusk, navigators could infer where land must lie. You try it now, shading your eyes as the sun rises higher. The terns loop and dart playfully, while a few frigate birds soar higher, wings still and deliberate. "Watch those," the elder says, pointing to the latter. "They are lazy flyers. They never waste strength. If they go that way." He gestures northward. "Then land is that way too." It seems simple enough, but the more you watch, the more nuanced it becomes. Some birds fly straight, others in curves. The navigator explains that the timing matters. Morning flights usually mean birds leaving the island to hunt, evening ones returning home. Misread the schedule, and you might follow them out into nowhere. You glance again at the horizon. Still, nothing but blue. "How do you know when to trust them?" you ask. He grins. "You learn each species' personality. Some are truthful. Some are liars." That earns a chuckle from the crew. You wonder what sort of bird he thinks you are. Probably the gull type, too noisy, easily distracted by snacks. By mid-morning, clouds begin to gather low over a patch of horizon. You've seen clouds every day, but these are different. Thicker, whiter at the base, like smoke rising from something unseen. The elder follows your gaze. "Clouds tell stories too," he says. "Look at the bottom. See how it glows?" You nod. The undersides are bright, almost reflective. "That means they are heavy with heat from land," he explains. "The sea cannot make that kind of light. There must be an island below them, warming the air." Historians still argue whether early navigators truly used such cloud reading systematically, or if these stories evolved later as romantic explanations. But recent studies with modern sailors prove the effect is real. Certain cloud types, especially cumulus-humulus, for more persistently over warm land than open ocean. So maybe the ancestors were just meteorologists without the instruments. The crew adjusts course slightly toward the glowing patch. You feel the canoe respond immediately, eager, cutting through the morning swell like a well-trained horse, catching the scent of home. Hours pass. The birds multiply. The water changes hue, from deep sapphire to a lighter turquoise. Shallow shelf, someone says. You peer over the side and see flashes of coral beneath the surface. The first color, other than blue in days. The elder dips a hand into the water and tastes it, nodding. Sweeter, he murmurs. Fresh streams nearby. The ocean apparently dilutes itself near islands. You try a cautious sip from your fingers. Maybe your tongue isn't as trained, but you think you taste something softer. It's mid-afternoon when someone finally spots it. A faint line on the horizon, shimmering like a mirage. You squint. It could be cloud shadow or wishful thinking, but slowly, painfully slowly, it grows solid. A ridge of green emerges, flanked by lighter sandbanks. The canoe erupts in quiet cheers. Even the usually stoic elder allows himself a satisfied hum. You can't help but grin. We did it, you whisper, though you've mostly been moral support and ballast. The crew begins preparations for landfall. Sails are adjusted, ropes coiled. The canoe smells suddenly different. Fresher, almost floral. You realize it's the scent of vegetation carried by the wind. After days of pure salt, it's intoxicating. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. There's a mainstream fact tucked in this moment. Smell really can reveal land. Scientists have documented that certain volatile organic compounds from plants and soil can travel miles over the sea, detectable by both birds and sensitive human noses. The ancestors might not have known the chemistry, but they trusted their senses. Do you see that darker patch there? The elder asks, pointing near the island's edge. That's reef. It breaks the waves differently. You must listen for the change before you see it. You focus and realize he's right. The ocean's voice shifts from a deep, rolling hum to a hiss of white water. Then comes the quirky tidbit. The elder tells you that in some old stories, reefs were described as sleeping giants. If you crossed them without proper greeting, they could wake and stir the sea against you. So even now, as the crew nears the island, they begin to chant softly, an apology to the giants for stepping on their backs. The chant is low, rhythmic, and calming. The canoe slows as paddles skim the water. You watch the waves breaking ahead, the clear shallows bright as glass. Fish flicker beneath, startled by your shadow. Then with a final push, the hull glides onto sand. The crunch beneath you feels shockingly solid after days of floating. For a moment, no one moves. The crew sits quietly, breathing in the scent of land. Earth leaves faint smoke. You realize how precious that smell is. Out there, surrounded by endless ocean, dryness becomes mythical. Finally, the elder steps ashore. He scoops a handful of sand, lifts it to his forehead, and whispers something you can't hear. Then he gestures for everyone to follow. First foot on new land must be thankful, he says. Otherwise, the island might forget you. You hop down and do the same. The sand is warm and soft, clinging to your skin. You whisper your own clumsy thanks, hoping the island understands tourist-level humility. You look back at the canoe resting in the shallows, hulls gleaming, ropes dripping. It looks almost alive, breathing slower now, as if it too is relieved. The elder smiles. The sea has given us rest. Tomorrow, She may take us again. You nod, glancing at the birds overhead, circling lazily back toward their nests. You understand now. Every sign, the clouds, the scent, the shimmer of waves, was part of a language written across sky and water. And somehow, you've learned a few of its words. As night begins to fall, the first stars appear above the new island. They look familiar now. Old friends meeting you at the door of a stranger's house. The first night on land feels strange, almost disorienting. The ground doesn't sway beneath you anymore, and your body misses it. When you lie down, you half expect the earth to rock you like the canoe did, but instead, it stays stubbornly still. Solid, heavy, almost rude in its stillness. Around you, the rest of the crew settles near a small fire. Faces drowsy in the flickering light. The air smells thick with greenery and salt smoke. Somewhere in the dark, a gecko chirps like a squeaky hinge. The elder, as always, sits a little apart, gazing toward the horizon. You realize that even now, his eyes are searching the stars. Habit runs deep. He reads the night even while standing on it. He motions you closer. Tomorrow, he says, we begin your lessons for real. You blink. You thought the voyage was the lesson. Apparently, that was just the introduction. At dawn, you find yourself standing near the edge of the lagoon, watching as the apprentices gather around a flat rock, etched with faint carvings, lines, circles, star shapes. It looks like graffiti, but it's not. This is a Papa Kilohoku, the elder explains, a starboard. Every navigator learns here before learning on the sea. The training begins not with charts or tools, but with silence. You stand in a circle, eyes half closed, while the elder speaks slowly about breathing. How to inhale with the tide, exhale with the wind. It sounds suspiciously like yoga, though you wisely don't say that out loud. The idea, he says, is to tune your body to the rhythm of the world before you start memorizing it. He instructs you to trace one finger along the horizon, naming directions as he does. Haikina, east, Komohana, west, Akau, north, Kima, south. Each word feels gentle, rounded, like pebbles smoothed by water. He says that each direction has personality. North is stern. East isn't about thinking that if you ever get... The mainstream historical fact is that training as a wayfinder took years, sometimes decades. It wasn't a casual skill. It was a sacred apprenticeship passed through families or master-student lineages. Young navigators were taught to memorize the entire star compass, the seasonal winds, the currents, the behavior of birds and fish, and the lore of hundreds of islands, without ever writing anything down. Everything was oral, rhythmic, sung. You get a taste of that rigor when the elder begins testing the apprentices. He points randomly to stars, and they answer instantly with the names, rising points, and corresponding home islands. When he turns to you, pointing to a bright one near the zenith, your mind blanks completely. Bob? You offer weakly. The apprentices laugh. The elder's face remains neutral, though his eyes glint with amusement. Close, he says. That's Echnaya Kamalama, the nurturing one. She watches the foolish. You bow dramatically. Then, I'm in good company. The morning continues with endurance drills, not physical, but mental. The apprentices must sit still, eyes closed, and recall entire routes, star by star, island by island, for as long as it takes to recite them. Hours pass. The only sounds are waves, wind, and the occasional snore of someone who's failed the test in the most comfortable way possible. You ask one of the older students, a quiet woman with sharp eyes, how they manage to remember so much. She shrugs. "Oh, you don't remember," she says. "You will become it. If you think of it as knowledge, you forget. If you think of it as family, you never do. There's something profoundly soothing in that. You try it yourself later, whispering star names like friends. It helps a little until you accidentally rename one after a sandwich. As the day grows hot, the elder tells you that advanced students practice sleep deprivation, navigating by instinct alone after days without rest. When your mind is tired, he explains, only truth stays awake. It sounds both mystical and suspiciously like finals week in college. Historians still argue about how much of this training was formalized and how much depended on individual intuition. Some accounts describe structured schools like those of Micronesia's Palace Navigators. Others insist it was learned informally at sea. Either way, the process produced sailors with a kind of embodied wisdom that modern simulation programs still struggle to replicate. By afternoon, the apprentices have moved on to practice with wind and water. The elder tosses palm leaves into the lagoon and asks each to predict where they'll drift. You try, squinting at the surface, and point confidently. The leaf floats the opposite way. The sea laughs at certainty, the elder says, smiling. She prefers humility. Then comes a lighter moment. During a break, one apprentice shows you a trick, how to tell wind direction by the tickle of your hair. It's better than licking your finger, he says, and less embarrassing. You both dissolve into laughter when his demonstration accidentally turns into a hair-ruffling contest. Even the elder allows a small chuckle, though he pretends to disapprove. As the sun sinks, the group gathers again by the starboard. This time, the elder draws a rough circle in the sand, dividing it with lines. This is your mind, he says. You fill it with the stars, but leave room for silence. Otherwise, there is no place for the sea to speak. That line stays with you. It's poetic, yes, but also practical. You realize that every skill they've shown, the wave reading, the cloud spotting, the bird watching, depends on quiet attention, the kind most of us rarely give anything anymore. Before dinner, the elder tests you one last time. He asks you to close your eyes and point to the direction of home, your own home, the one thousands of miles and centuries away. You hesitate, then lift your arm instinctively. He nods, satisfied. Maybe not right, he says softly, but honest. It's a good start. As night deepens, you sit by the fire listening to the rhythmic clatter of insects. The apprentices hum lullabies that double as star chants, their voices weaving with the crackle of wood. You look up. The stars are back again, your old companions. They don't seem so distant now. The elder leans close. When you can look at the sky and feel your heart slow down, he says, then you are ready to travel again. You smile, already feeling the sea calling. The idea of leaving the solid earth suddenly feels less like departure and more like returning home. The following night arrives heavy and fragrant, a blanket of humid air, thick with the smell of roasted breadfruit and the faint sweetness of hibiscus. The campfire crackles lazily, throwing warm light over the circle of apprentices. Tonight isn't about steering or memorizing constellations. Tonight, the elder says, you will learn to listen to songs. At first, that sounds easy enough. You hum in the shower. You know songs. But this lesson isn't about melody for pleasure. It's about survival. Songs are maps, the elder explains, poking at the fire with a stick. They hold the sea in memory. He gestures for everyone to sit closer. The group begins a slow, repetitive chant, soft and steady, like paddles dipping in rhythm. The words roll in long vowels, repeating island names and directions. Each line, the elder says, is a step on a journey. Sing the song right, and you arrive safely. Forget one verse, and the sea forgets you. The mainstream historical fact here is both simple and staggering. Polynesian voyagers encoded their navigational knowledge into chants and oral poetry. Each star path, each island sequence, each seasonal wind could be recalled through rhythm and verse. The human brain, after all, remembers melody better than data. What you're hearing tonight is both lullaby and longitude. The chant continues, hypnotic and low. The fire crackles, waves hiss beyond the trees. One apprentice, a young man with a voice like velvet, begins a solo verse describing a long voyage, naming currents, reefs, and birds. You can tell he doesn't just sing it, he sees it. His hands move unconsciously, miming the shape of waves, the flight of terns. The others hum along, their voices rising and falling like the tide. The elder leans toward you. Now you try, he says. Your brain panics. Try what exactly? He smiles. Make a verse. Something true. Even if it's small. You think for a moment, heart pounding like a nervous drum. Then you whisper awkwardly. The moon sits in a bowl of water. The paddle makes a silver road. The group hums approval. The elder chuckles softly. Good, he says. Short, honest, and wet. That's all a song needs. You grin, relieved. Somewhere deep inside, you feel a quiet click of connection, as if you've just shaken hands with the sea. The evening drifts into storytelling. The elder shares one about a navigator who could sing the islands into being. When he forgot a verse, the island would vanish from the horizon until he remembered it. Historians still argue. The elder admits with a shrug. Whether that means he really made them disappear, or whether forgetting directions felt the same as losing them. Either way, the result is identical. You sip from a coconut shell of sweet water, and think about that. The sea doesn't care about metaphors. It only cares about whether you know the way. Then comes the quirky tidbit. One old legend claims that some navigators kept their songs of the sea secret from even their families, teaching them only to chosen apprentices. To prevent eavesdropping, they would hum false verses while paddling near shore. Spies who tried to memorize the tune would end up hopelessly lost at sea, following a melody that led nowhere. You can't help but laugh at the thought. Ancient GPS encryption through catchy decoy jingles. The elder rises slowly and begins to pace the circle, tapping the ground in rhythm with his steps. When you sail, the chant becomes breath, he says. Every pull of the paddle has its note. When you stop singing, the sea thinks you are asleep. You picture a silent canoe adrift under the stars, the ocean wondering why no one is talking to it anymore. There's something profoundly sad about that image. You promise yourself you'll keep humming, even if it's off-key. Later, as the fire burns lower, the apprentices begin another song. This one softer, more intimate. It's about homecoming, though most of them haven't yet left. The verses describe islands by taste and scent. The breadfruit smells of rain. The reef tastes of morning salt. You can almost feel the places in the words. The melody sways gently, almost like the sea itself is joining in, rolling against the beach in lazy applause. You lie back on the sand, eyes half open, listening. The stars above shimmer faintly, reflected in the lagoon so perfectly that it's impossible to tell which is sky and which is water. The two mirrors meet, forming a dome around you. The music fills that dome, each note rippling outward until even the night insects seem to buzz in time. The elder's voice rises again, this time lower, slower. A song, he says, is not for your ears, it is for your bones. When you sing, your body remembers things your mind forgets. He taps his chest lightly. Here lives the map. The idea lodges in you like a heartbeat. Maybe that's why these people could navigate without instruments. Because the instructions weren't written on paper, but printed into muscle memory through centuries of repetition and rhythm. You drift somewhere between waking and dreaming. The chant continues in slow waves, and for a moment you're not sure if it's still the apprentices singing or if the ocean has taken over. The voices blend with the hush of surf and the occasional crackle of the dying fire. Everything merges, Om, Si, Sars, into one long, comforting hum. Then a faint breeze rises, cool, against your face. The elder says softly, "The wind is answering. It remembers too." He smiles, eyes gleaming in the firelight. "Tomorrow, we will listen to what the wind says." You nod drowsily, words tumbling through your head like shells in the tide. Song, stars, breath, memory. You think about how music feels when you hum to yourself. How vibration travels through bone and chest. How maybe, just maybe, that's a tiny version of what these voyagers carried across oceans. Before sleep takes you, you whisper your small verse again. The moon, the bowl of water, the silver road, and feel a quiet pride. You've added one pebble to the mountain of their songs. The fire fades to embers. The ocean whispers its approval, and the night folds around you like a blanket stitched with stars. The next morning begins without hurry. A pale fog hangs over the lagoon, and the air feels like warm milk against your skin. The camp is quiet, no one shouting, no clatter of preparation. The sea itself seems half asleep. You stretch, yawn, and watch the sun rise like a shy guest, its reflection trembling on the still water. You think this might be a rest day, but the elder shakes his head. Today, he says, you learn patience. That sounds suspiciously like doing nothing, which, honestly, you could excel at. But it turns out patience has layers. By mid-morning, the canoes are ready again. The plan is to cross a long, empty stretch. No islands for many days. We follow the silence between lands, the elder says. If you can stay calm in that, you can stay calm anywhere. You try not to look too nervous as you climb aboard. The canoe glides from the lagoon into open ocean, leaving the comforting outline of the island behind. You settle into a rhythm. Paddles dip, the sail breathes, and soon the horizon becomes a perfect circle of blue. It's both beautiful and slightly terrifying, like being trapped inside a painting that forgot to add scenery. At first, the day passes pleasantly enough. You watch flying fish skitter across the water, their tiny wings catching sunlight. Someone hums an old navigation chant. The melody ripples through the air like perfume. But as hours pass, time begins to stretch. You lose track of how long you've been moving. There's no clock, no landmarks, no news feed to scroll. The only updates come from the wind, which says little. The elder calls this the long silence. He explains that every voyage includes a stretch where the sea tests your patience, not with storms or danger, but with nothingness. The young ones fear sharks, he says, but emptiness is hungrier. He's right. As night falls, you begin to feel the weight of it. The horizon disappears. Even the stars seem faint behind thin clouds. The ocean around you turns into a black, breathing creature. Every small sound, a creak of wood, a splash, feels enormous. You tell yourself it's peaceful, but your heartbeat disagrees. To distract yourself, you count waves. You get to maybe 70 before losing track. Then you start naming them Greg, Linda, Tsunami, Bob, until even that game dissolves into drowsy nonsense. The canoe rocks steadily, a lullaby with a hint of menace. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Some Polynesian voyages lasted months, covering thousands of miles. Crews would sleep in shifts, ration food, and trust entirely in their navigator's memory. Their survival depended on maintaining calm through long stretches like this. You begin to appreciate the mental fortitude that required. But there's a quirky tidbit too. Old sailors believed that if you stared too long into the blank horizon, the sea would borrow your dreams. It wasn't dangerous, just confusing. You'd wake up later, unsure which direction you were going. The elder confirms this with a chuckle. The sea loves curious minds, he says. Sometimes she keeps them for herself. By the second day, the monotony starts to blur into serenity. You stop expecting change and begin to enjoy the sameness. The sound of paddles becomes background music, the hiss of waves a constant whisper. You even start to sense subtle differences. The air feels cooler in the morning, thicker by afternoon. The rhythm of swells shifts with the wind. You realize the silence isn't empty. It's full of patterns too quiet for noise. At one point, you notice a faint streak of color beneath the water, a shadow moving lazily under the hull. You lean over, half expecting a whale or a shark. Instead, it's a vast drifting mat of seaweed, golden brown and undulating like hair. Tiny crabs cling to it, hitchhiking across the Pacific. The elder names it Moana's carpet, the ocean's welcome mat. When you see it, he says, you're still far from land, but not lost. You find that comforting. Even the smallest signs start to feel like blessings. By afternoon, the sun presses hard, turning the deck into a stove. The crew shades themselves with woven mats. You join them, staring out at the waves until your thoughts begin to melt. It's a strange, meditative kind of fatigue. Your body feels heavy, but your mind floats freely, untethered. The elder takes this moment to teach another lesson. Out here, he says softly, your thoughts are like paddles. Push too hard, and you tire quickly. Drift a little, and you'll find your rhythm. He tells you a story about a navigator who once tried to hurry the ocean. He shouted at the waves, the elder says, smiling. So the sea stopped moving. He learned patience that day. You laugh, half delirious from heat, imagining the ocean folding its arms and saying, "Fine, you row then." That night, clouds erase the stars completely. The canoe moves by instinct now, guided by the feel of the swell and the memory of rhythm. The darkness is total. You can't see your own hands. The crew paddles silently, trusting sound and muscle memory. The ocean is louder than you've ever heard it. Low roars and soft sighs overlapping. It feels alive, aware. Listen, the elder whispers. You hear that? You tilt your head. Somewhere in the darkness, beneath the waves, a deep booming echoes, like a drum played far below the world. That's the voice of the deep, he says. Whales talking maybe, or the sea reminding us she's awake. Historians still argue whether ancient navigators could use whale songs as cues for direction. Some claim they recognized specific rhythms linked to migration routes. Others call that romantic speculation. Either way, the sound feels ancient, comforting. You imagine those vast creatures passing beneath, guardians of the same highways you're following. Hours later, as exhaustion blurs into peace, you lie flat and let the ocean cradle you. The canoe rises and falls, rises and falls. A heartbeat you can trust. The elders' chant drifts through the night. Low, slow syllables that mix with the whale's echo. You realize then that the silence you feared isn't really silence at all. It's a conversation too big for words. You fall asleep to it, adrift on sound and rhythm, dreaming not of land, but of infinite blue. When dawn finally returns, soft and gold, it feels like an old friend arriving quietly at your bedside. The sea is calm again. The horizon is still empty, but your fear of it has dissolved. You stretch, smile, and whisper to the water, "I'm still here." The waves answer with a small, approving hiss, as if to say, "Good, keep listening." When land finally rises again from the horizon, it feels less like discovery and more like recognition, a reunion between old friends. The island appears first as a bruise of dark green against the morning light, then gradually sharpens into ridges, palm crowns, and pale beaches. The crew murmurs in relief but not surprise. The elder only nods, calm as ever, as though the sea has simply returned what it borrowed. The air smells different here. Wet earth, wood smoke, faint sweetness of fruit. It hits you harder than you expect. After so many days of salt, it's intoxicating. The apprentices grin and start singing, a soft chant that rises and falls like the rhythm of waves. You feel giddy too, half from exhaustion, half from the miracle of stability appearing again. As you draw closer, you notice the reefs guarding the island like pale bones. The water shifts color, from deep cobalt to translucent turquoise, dotted with coral heads that glimmer just below the surface. "Slowly," the elder says, his tone low and reverent. "We must wake the island gently. That's the first part of arrival. Respect." Before landing, everyone begins to chant. The sound is low and rhythmic, not loud enough to disturb the sea. It's an offering, a greeting to the unseen spirits of the place. They hear us before they see us. The elder whispers, "If they like the sound, they calm the waves." You glance over the side of the canoe and swear the water does seem smoother. The hull glides forward as though drawn by invisible hands. The mainstream historical fact here is straightforward. Polynesian voyages weren't random leaps of exploration, but deliberate migrations, often guided by ritual. Arrival ceremonies were integral to ensuring harmony between travelers and the new land. Archaeological evidence, ceremonial platforms, ritual offerings, shows how these landfalls blended navigation, religion, and ecology into one seamless act of belonging. The canoes finally slide into the shallows, hulls kissing sand. For a few moments, no one moves. Then, following tradition, the eldest navigator steps ashore first, holding a small branch of coastal plant. He presses it to the ground, whispering words that sound half prayer, half poem. "The sea brings us," he says. "The land accepts us. Only then does everyone else step onto the beach. The island feels alive beneath your feet. The sand is hot, dotted with tiny shells. Inland, you can see coconut palms bending slightly in the breeze, their leaves whispering in tones almost like voices. Birds flash between them, green, red, and white streaks of motion. Everything smells astonishingly alive. First, we listen," the elder says. "We must know if the island wants us to stay." That listening takes form as observation. The apprentices fan out to study signs. Where the seabirds nest, where fresh water seeps through the sand, what insects hum in the air. You follow one group to a tide pool brimming with life. Tiny crabs, neon blue fish, and the occasional curious sea cumber pretending to be a rock. One apprentice lifts a shell and shakes his head. "Too few hermits," he murmurs. "This island is quiet." You're not sure if that's good or bad, but you nod solemnly anyway. As the crew unloads supplies, the elder leads you toward a clearing shaded by pandanus trees. He begins explaining the customs of first contact, how gifts of song or carved wood were left as introductions, how food was shared before names. "Every island is family," he says. "Some cousins you visit often, some you meet only once. There's a quirky tidbit tucked in there. In some traditions, voyagers would even talk to the first plants they encountered. We greet the yam, the taro, the banana," the elder says with a faint smile. "Otherwise, they think we're thieves." You imagine trying that at a modern grocery store. "Hello, avocado. Thank you for existing," and grin. Soon the camp begins to take shape. Fires are lit. Food is cooked. The smell of roasted fish drifts through the air, making your stomach growl. The apprentices weave palm fronds into mats, while others chant softly, keeping the rhythm of the sea alive, even on land. The elder explains that singing helps the island learn their voices. It's a way of blending into the new environment. As the afternoon passes, you wander inland with a few others. The forest hums softly, every leaf shimmering in the filtered sunlight. You find a small stream, clear and cold. When you taste it, it's like drinking glass, so pure you almost forget what thirst meant. The elder kneels beside you, cupping water in his palms. "Sweet," he says. "The island welcomes us." Historians still argue whether these rituals were purely spiritual or also practical, ways to ensure health, avoid resource conflicts, and read ecological cues. But standing there, the stream singing over smooth stones, you suspect it doesn't matter. The sacred and the sensible are the same thing when survival depends on respect. That evening, the crew gathers by the shore for the welcome fire. They lay out offerings of fish, fruit, and flowers. The elder begins a chant older than memory. His voice rises slowly, each word stretching like a wave crest before breaking into silence. The apprentices join in one by one. You hum along, hesitant but earnest. The chant tells of the first voyagers who followed birds across empty seas, of canoes that carry both people and dreams. It speaks of loss and arrival, of gratitude and awe. The rhythm matches the surf, soft, repetitive, eternal. As the song fades, the elder turns to you. "Now the island knows your voice," he says quietly. "You are part of the story." For a long while, everyone sits in silence, listening to the fire crackle and the surf sighing nearby. The sky turns deep violet. The first stars appear, reflected in the tide pools like scattered lanterns. You realize the most powerful moments in these journeys aren't the departures or discoveries, but these pauses, the breath between leaving and staying, the hush where gratitude lives. A soft wind brushes your face. It carries the faint scent of breadfruit roasting. Someone laughs sleepily in the dark. You look up at the stars, those patient teachers, and whisper to yourself, still following the road. The sea answers with a single small wave rolling up the sand and retreating again. A quiet nod of approval before the night settles fully in. By morning, the island feels almost domestic. Smoke drifts lazily from the cooking fires, mingling with the scent of wet sand and pandanus leaves. Someone's already pounding taro, someone else weaving rope. A dog you've never seen before trots through camp as if it owns the place. The air hums with contentment, the sound of people adjusting to solid ground after too long afloat. For the first time since you began this journey, you wake without urgency. The elder still rises before dawn, of course, but today he doesn't call for sails or chants. He lets you stretch and wander, as though the island itself is giving everyone permission to rest. You decide to explore. Barefoot, you follow a narrow path leading inland, where the forest grows denser and greener. The leaves are slick with dew, and birds chatter overhead with the enthusiasm of morning coffee drinkers. You can hear a river somewhere nearby, its sound low and steady, like the breathing of a giant asleep. When you reach it, you stop, awed. The water is glass clear, winding through smooth volcanic stone. The crew is already there, some washing clothes, others bathing or filling gourds. The elder squats at the bank, stirring the current with a stick. A river tells you what kind of island you've landed on, he says. If it flows gently, the island is kind. If it hides, the island is shy. You dip your hands in and smile. This one feels polite, you say. He laughs softly. Then let's be polite back. He scoops water and sprinkles it over his head like a blessing. You follow, and the cool shock of it makes you gasp. It's the best sensation in the world after days of salt crust and sweat. Andando. The elder explains that voyagers would sometimes spend weeks on a new island before sailing again. You have to learn the island's ways, he says. Where food grows, how the tides change, which wines belong to her. That's what today is about. Learning to live, not just survive. You return to camp as breakfast begins. The apprentices are experimenting with local ingredients. Roasting breadfruit, grinding coconut, steaming fish in banana leaves. The smell is heavenly. Someone hands you a piece wrapped in leaf, and you nearly weep at the taste. It's buttery, soft, just smoky enough. A mainstream historical fact slips naturally into the meal. Polynesian colonization of the Pacific wasn't simply exploration, it was deliberate settlement. Wherever voyagers went, they brought plants and animals. Taro, breadfruit, coconuts, pigs, dogs, chickens. These weren't accidental castaways. They were entire ecosystems, transplanted carefully across thousands of miles. You look around the camp and realize you're sitting among living cargo that once crossed oceans in tiny canoes. The elder tells a story between bites. Our ancestors said breadfruit was a star that fell into the soil. When it ripens, we remember where it came from. He taps his temple. Aye, every meal is part of the map. You choose slower after that, half expecting your breakfast to start glowing. After eating, you wander with one of the apprentices, a young woman named Kalani, who carries a woven basket for collecting fruit. She shows you how to read the forest, how certain vines mean fresh water is near, how the bark of one tree can calm fevers if boiled. You're amazed at how much knowledge is wrapped up in ordinary things. When you ask how she remembers it all, she shrugs. We tell stories, she says. When a child learns the story of a plant, they never forget its name. She plucks a flower and hands it to you. This one we call the sleepy blossom. It closes when storms come. You tuck it behind your ear, half joking, half honored. A quirky tidbit follows as you hike. Kalani explains that some early voyagers believed each island had a guardian spirit shaped like a particular animal. Here, it's the crab, she says. If you see one on your path, you stop and thank it. Otherwise, you'll stub your toe. She grins. And no one wants that curse. By midday, the sun climbs high, painting the sea bright silver. The crew gathers under palm shade, weaving mats and repairing ropes. Even on land, their hands can't stay idle. You help braid a line of coconut fiber, though your fingers keep tangling it into knots that look like failed friendship bracelets. Don't fight the rope. One apprentice advises kindly, "Just invite it." You're not sure if that's practical advice or deep philosophy, but it works. Historians still argue whether the first settlers of these islands saw themselves as conquerors, migrants, or pilgrims. The elder offers a simpler view. They were gardeners of worlds, he says. Each new shore was a seedling. They didn't claim land, they tended it. That line lingers as you walk to the beach again at dusk. The tide's gone out, revealing tide pools that glow faintly with trapped sunlight. Children from the nearby village are playing in the shallows, chasing tiny fish with laughter that sounds like wind chimes. You realize this island isn't uninhabited. There are people here, families whose ancestors perhaps came on voyages just like yours. They wave as if you're expected, like cousins showing up late to dinner. The elder joins them, exchanging greetings. There's no awkwardness, only familiarity. They share coconuts, gossip about winds and fishing. It's strange. These islanders might live hundreds of miles from the elder's home, yet their words, gestures, and songs overlap like dialects of the same ancient language. You catch fragments of chant that mirror the ones you learned. It's as if the ocean itself is the mother tongue. As the sky turns gold, everyone gathers for a communal feast. There's laughter, stories, music. Someone starts drumming on a hollow log, the beat quick and playful. You find yourself clapping along. The elder laughs. "You're not lost anymore," he says. "You're part of the noise." Later, when night deepens and most of the camp drifts towards sleep, you linger by the fire with Kalani. The waves hiss gently nearby, the stars returning in their eternal pattern. "Does it ever get boring?" you ask. "All these islands, all these crossings." She shakes her head. Every island tells the same story differently. You just have to listen for its accent. You think about that as you lie down, head resting on woven mat, fire crackling beside you. The air smells of smoke and sea. Somewhere, a crab clicks across the sand, probably making sure you didn't forget your thanks. The ground doesn't feel foreign anymore. It feels borrowed, trusted, and briefly yours. You close your eyes, and the surf keeps whispering, reminding you that no matter how still the land feels, the sea is always waiting for the next journey. The wind changes that night. You notice it first as a sigh threading through the palm leaves, gentle at first, then restless, like someone pacing. By morning, clouds have gathered in thick gray knots over the horizon. The air smells sharper, heavy with rain waiting to fall. The elder stands at the edge of camp, watching the surf grow teeth. "The ocean remembers we've been too comfortable," he murmurs. "She wants to see if we still respect her." You're not sure if he's joking. Probably not. Preparations begin quietly. The canoes are pulled higher onto the beach, their sails wrapped tight. The apprentices move with the calm efficiency of people who know storms like relatives. Difficult, but familiar. You help secure ropes, your fingers clumsy against the rough fiber. The air hums with anticipation, like the pause before an argument. By midday, the wind has found its voice. The trees sway, the sea darkens, and the first drops of rain hit your skin, warm and deliberate. The elder turns to the group. "We stay inland tonight. But remember," he says, "storms are not enemies. They are conversations." As you retreat to the shelter of the forest, thunder rolls across the sky, low and resonant. The rain thickens, drumming on leaves and thatched roofs. You huddle beneath a woven mat, the scent of wet earth rising all around. It's oddly soothing, like being inside the world's biggest lullaby played on percussion. The apprentices begin to sing softly, the same chant they used when calling calm seas, but slower, deeper. The rhythm matches the rain. You can't tell whether it's meant to calm the storm or remind you to calm down. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind. Pacific voyagers didn't just fear storms, they studied them. Their oral traditions included detailed knowledge of seasonal wind patterns, storm tracks, and even signs of approaching cyclones. By reading the color of clouds, the temperature of wind, or the behavior of birds, they could anticipate changes days in advance. These weren't just spiritual intuitions. They were empirical observations encoded in myth. But there's also the stranger side. The elder tells a story about a navigator who could summon wind by whistling. Not magic, he insists, eyes twinkling. Just memory. The sea hears the pitch of those who have crossed her many times. You grin, half skeptical, half tempted to try. When you whistle experimentally, a gust immediately shakes the trees. The apprentices laugh and clap. You see? The elder says. Even beginners have charm. The laughter lightens the mood as the rain pounds harder. You realize storms aren't just danger. They're spectacle. The ocean puts on a show, and the island provides front row seats. Lightning flashes over the lagoon, illuminating the waves for a split second like polished glass. The roar of surf mixes with the hiss of rain until everything, sky, sea, air, becomes one giant heartbeat. In the chaos, the elder's calm is unshakable. He sits cross-legged, eyes closed, as though meditating. You edge closer and ask how he can stay so relaxed. He opens one eye. When I was your age, he says, I asked my teacher the same thing. He told me, you can't drown if you become the wave. It took me 40 years to understand. That line lands in your mind like a pebble dropped into deep water, sending ripples outward. You watch the rain fall, realizing it doesn't fight gravity. It just follows it home. The storm lasts for hours, then suddenly stops. The silence that follows is louder than the thunder. Everything drips, glistens, breathes. The air feels scrubbed clean, and the scent of the sea is fresher, almost sweet. The elder rises, brushing off his shoulders. See? The ocean just wanted a chat. You step out from under the trees. The beach looks transformed. The sand has been smoothed flat. The waves rolling in softer now, apologetic. Pieces of driftwood lie scattered like gifts. In the shallows, fish glitter in the returning sunlight, unbothered by the drama. The apprentices laugh, splashing into the water. Kalani calls you to join them, and you wade in, the sea warm against your skin. The elder watches from the shore, smiling faintly. After the storm, he says, we thank both the wind and the silence. As the crew gathers shells and debris, you spot something peculiar. A piece of coral shaped like a face, half smiling. You show it to Kalani, who nods seriously. A spirit of the reef, she says. They visit after storms to see who's still here. You set it gently back in the water. Then it'll find its way home. A quirky tidbit follows. Kalani tells you some voyagers believed that if you dreamt of thunder while at sea, it meant a spirit ancestor was steering the storm away from your canoe. The elder overhears and nods, approvingly. Our ancestors are busy people, he says. They always have meetings during bad weather. By evening, the sky turns clear again, painted gold and pink. The crew gathers driftwood and builds a new fire. The flames crackle, reflecting in everyone's tired but content faces. Someone starts humming a slow tune, a kind of lullaby for the storm just past. The elder joins in, voice low and raspy. You listen, realizing that this simple act, singing after survival, is part of the rhythm of life out here. The sea roars, the sea rests, and humans hum along, neither conquering nor cowering. Historians still argue whether Polynesian spirituality was primarily practical, born from necessity, or purely devotional. Watching this scene, you suspect it's both. The chants that once guided canoes also comforted hearts. The myths that described wind spirits also described real weather patterns. Faith and physics held hands beneath the same sky. As the last of the sunlight fades, the elder looks up and whispers a short prayer of thanks, not to any single god, but to the balance of things. Storms remind us we're small, he says, but small things float. The apprentices laugh softly, repeating the phrase like a proverb. You store it in your mind alongside the others. A small jewel of wisdom wrapped in humor. When night finally deepens, the stars return brighter than ever, washed clean by the rain. You lie back on the damp sand, the world still glistening. The air smells like renewal. Somewhere offshore, waves murmur secrets again, gentle and unhurried. And as you drift towards sleep, you think maybe the elder was right. You can't drown if you become the wave. The next few days slide by like warm water over stone. The ocean stays calm, almost shy after her outburst. The crew repairs what the storm loosened. Sails relashed, ropes retied, spirits reset. The island hums with the small, comforting noises of mending. Fibers twisting, laughter, the occasional scolding from the elder when a knot looks too proud of itself. But something new drifts onto the horizon. Late one afternoon, while you and Kalani collect shells along the beach, she squints toward a smudge of white, far out to sea. That cloud doesn't move like a cloud, she says. You shade your eyes. The shape is long, narrow, and unnaturally straight. Not mist. A sail. The elder confirms it by evening. Foreign hulls, he says quietly. Square sails. Not our kin. His voice carries no anger, just the weight of recognition. The way you might sigh when you see a storm returning from a distance. He explains that in his grandparents' time, such ships began appearing often, carrying men with pale faces, heavy clothes, and strange tools. They brought mirrors, he says, and sickness, and maps that told us where we already lived. The mood in camp softens into wary silence. No one rushes to greet the newcomers. The sea between you and them glows red with sunset, like a warning light. The mainstream historical fact behind his words is clear. By the 16th and 17th centuries, European explorers began crisscrossing the Pacific, mapping islands already charted in Polynesian memory for centuries. They brought trade, weapons, religion, and disruption. Within generations, indigenous navigation and oral tradition were nearly erased under the weight of imported compasses and colonial charts. That night, you sit by the fire as the crew discusses what to do. Kalani traces circles in the sand. They look lost, she says. The elder replies, they think we are. You watch the distant ship anchor offshore, a ghost against the horizon. Lanterns flicker along its deck. For the first time on this voyage, you feel like you're watching history split. Two worlds approaching, one so certain of its superiority, the other so deeply fluent in silence. Morning brings movement. A small boat rows toward shore. The men inside wear broad hats and long coats, absurdly hot for this climate. When they step into the shallows, they hesitate, as though expecting the water to burn. The elder greets them calmly, his voice steady. You have traveled far, he says. What are you seeking? They respond in a language thick with consonants and confusion. One gestures toward the canoes, another at the sky. They seem astonished by the people who live without compass or sextant. One even points at the horizon and mimes paddling, as if asking, "How?" The elder simply smiles. By listening, you notice their eyes dart to the horizon, the waves, the sails, all things they measure, but do not truly see. They scribble in notebooks, sketching the canoes, the stars overhead, the people who have never needed ink to remember. The exchange remains polite, but uneasy. They offer beads and nails. The apprentices trade coconuts and roasted breadfruit. Everyone smiles too much, trying to bridge a gap that feels wider than the ocean itself. When they leave, the crew exhales collectively. Kalani mutters, "They look at us like we're stories they want to keep." No. The elder's expression turns distant. "And they will," he says softly. "But stories change in other mouths." That evening, you walk alone along the tide line. The foreign ship remains anchored offshore, its sails ghost pale against the darkening sky. You wonder what the sailors are thinking, if they feel pride or loneliness. Probably both. The sea that carried them here also carries you, and in that, maybe you're kin after all. You find the elder sitting by the fire, sharpening a paddle. He looks up. "You've seen the future," he says quietly. "It has square sails and restless eyes." He tells you how, in later years, some islanders began to doubt their own wayfinding. Foreign captains scoffed at oral navigation, calling it superstition. Young sailors started to trust compasses more than the stars. A people who forget their road, he says, forget themselves. Historians still argue whether the loss of traditional navigation was inevitable, a casualty of modernization, or an avoidable erasure. But here, listening to the elder's quiet voice, it feels deeply personal, a wound disguised as progress. To lighten the mood, he shares a small story. Once, a white captain asked an old navigator how he could steer without a compass. The navigator said, "I stay still. The islands move around me." The captain thought he was mocking him, but he was just explaining truth. You can't help but smile. "That's genius," you say. The elder chuckles. "Yes, but only if you understand." As night falls, the ship's lights shimmer faintly offshore. The apprentices watch silently. Kalani breaks the quiet with a sigh. "They look like trapped stars," she says. The elder nods. Stars that forgot how to move. Later, the crew gathers for a small ceremony. A reaffirmation, the elder calls it. They chant the names of islands, ancestors, and constellations, as though reminding the sea itself that they still remember. You join them, voice uncertain but sincere. When the final verse fades, the elder stands and lifts his face to the wind. "We will keep the road alive," he says, "even if the world pretends it's gone." You look toward the foreign ship again. Its sails are furled, its lanterns dim. Maybe they'll leave tomorrow. Maybe they'll stay. Either way, you understand now that the real voyage isn't about distance. It's about memory. The ocean doesn't forget. She just waits for someone to listen again. As you lie down to sleep, the sea hums softly at the shore. Somewhere beyond the waves, new maps are being drawn, inked in confidence but not in understanding. You close your eyes and whisper to the dark, "We were here first." The tide rises, brushes your toes, and whispers back, "Still are." The ship is gone by morning. It left silently, without farewells, just a faint smear of smoke dissolving into the horizon. The sea looks strangely empty without it, though the elder insists the water prefers it that way. Too many straight lines on those ships, he mutters. The ocean likes curves. The camp returns to its rhythm. Life, as it always does, drifts onward. Yet something feels changed, like a note that lingers after a song ends. The apprentices talk quietly about the visitors, wondering if their stories will spread, if other ships will follow. The elder listens. Expression unreadable. Finally, he says, "We can't stop the tide, but we can choose what we keep dry." That afternoon, the crew prepares to leave the island. Repairs are finished. The hulls gleam with fresh oil. The sea calls again, gentle but insistent. You feel it in your chest, a low vibration that means it's time to move. Before departing, the elder gathers everyone on the beach for a small ceremony. "This island welcomed us," he says. "Now we thank it by leaving it as we found it." Offerings are placed at the base of a pandanus tree. Fruit, shells, a carved paddle. You add a small stone from your pocket, the first you picked up when you arrived. It feels right to return it. As the canoes push off, the island recedes slowly, framed by morning mist. Kalani waves until it becomes a blur, then a memory. The sea stretches ahead, endless and familiar. But this voyage feels different. The elder says they're following an old path to visit one of the last masters, a navigator who never stopped practicing the wave language, even after others traded it for compasses. Days pass. The sea behaves kindly, as if in respect for your purpose. The crew hums work songs, low and steady. The horizon stays clean, no square sails interrupting. You find yourself slipping easily back into rhythm, listening, feeling, guessing the waves. It's strange how quickly your body remembers what your mind keeps forgetting. On the 5th morning, you spot it. A small island, green and unassuming. Its reef glinting like a smile. This is Satawal, the elder says softly, home of Mau Piailuk, the last of the traditional Micronesian navigators to train in the old ways. A mainstream historical fact. In the 1970s, long after many assumed the art had vanished, Mau guided the Polynesian voyaging canoe Hoklea from Hawaii to Tahiti, using nothing but stars, waves, and memory, reviving a tradition thought extinct. Without him, modern wayfinding might have remained a myth. When you step ashore, the heat feels different, heavier, closer to the equator. The island hums with life. Children play near the water, their laughter echoing across the sand. The elder leads you through a narrow path to a thatched house, set slightly apart from the village. There, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, is the man himself. Old now, hair silver, eyes bright as wet stone. He greets you with a nod, as if expecting you. His voice is soft, but carries like a tide. "You've come to remember," he says. You sit. The sand warm under your legs. The elder bows deeply. The apprentices follow. "We are your grandchildren," he says, "even if we forgot for a while." Mao smiles faintly. Forgetting is easy. Listening again is harder. He begins to speak, not lecturing, but storytelling. He describes nights when he could feel islands beneath clouds, days when the waves told him of storms hundreds of miles away. His hands move as he talks, drawing invisible maps in the air. Each island sings its own song, he says. When you've listened long enough, you can hear them all at once. You realize he's describing something far beyond technique. It's devotion, a relationship with the sea as intimate as breathing. The apprentices listen raptly. Kalani's eyes shine. How do you teach something that can't be written? she asks. Mao chuckles. You don't teach it. You remind it. He taps her forehead gently. It's already here. The sea taught your ancestors. They taught you through your blood. A quirky tidbit slips into the conversation. Mao tells of one voyage where he used the reflection of stars on clouds when the real stars were hidden. The clouds remember light longer than the sea, he says with a wink. They're better students. Everyone laughs softly, though you can tell they're memorizing every word. The elder looks humbled. A master in the presence of his teacher's teacher. Historians still argue how Mao retained this knowledge when nearly everyone else lost it, whether he was trained by secret schools or through sheer personal obsession. But sitting here, watching him trace wave patterns in the air like calligraphy, you stop caring about academic debates. You're watching living history, the last thread of an unbroken conversation stretching back thousands of years. As the sun sets, Mao grows quiet. He gestures toward the horizon where sea and sky melt into one another. The ocean never belonged to anyone, he says softly. It belongs to those who listen. When you sail, remember that you are not crossing it. You are part of it. The words settle over everyone like a blessing. Later, as stars ignite above, Mao joins you by the water. He hums an old chant, low, almost like the wind itself. The rhythm is so familiar that your muscles respond before your mind does, swaying gently with the melody. You feel tears sting your eyes without knowing why. Maybe it's gratitude, maybe awe, maybe both. He finishes and looks at you. One day, you'll tell this story, he says. But tell it slowly, so people can hear the waves between your words. You promise you will. The next morning, Mao sees you off at the shore. He stands ankle-deep in the surf, hand raised in farewell. The elder bows deeply once more. Kalani whispers, "We've seen the past breathe." As the canoe pulls away, Mao grows smaller but no less present. His chant lingers, carried by the wind. Long after Hulks is out of sight. The elder looks at you, his face soft with pride and melancholy. That, he says, was the last master of the swell. You look back at the shimmering line of the island, at the endless blue ahead, and realize something profound. Knowledge this deep doesn't die. It drifts. It waits. It returns when called by the right voice. The sea beneath you murmurs agreement. The sea feels lighter now, as if carrying you itself. Leaving Satawal, you sense the echo of Mao's chant in every ripple. A steady pulse beneath the waves. The crew paddles quietly, almost reverently. Even the elder seems subdued, his gaze lingering on the horizon. No one wants to break the spell just yet. Days pass in calm procession. The sky is open and vast, filled with small, cotton-like clouds that wander aimlessly. You've learned by now that even they have meaning. Tiny messengers of humidity and temperature, wind and distance. You can almost hear Mao's voice in your head. The clouds remember light longer than the sea. The elder decides it's time to put your learning to use. You have listened long enough, he says. Now, find the way. He gestures for you to take the navigator's position near the stern. It feels enormous, like being handed a crown you haven't earned. The apprentices grin, whispering encouragement. You swallow your nerves, sit cross-legged, and stare at the horizon. Remember, the elder says softly, the sea already knows where we're going. You just have to agree. You close your eyes. The hull hums beneath you, rocking with the familiar rhythm of swells. You feel the cross currents tugging faintly at your senses, the wind brushing your cheek, the deep undertone of the ocean like a heartbeat you can almost match your breathing to. The sky behind your eyelids glows reddish-orange through thin skin. You point instinctively, without calculation, toward a faint shimmer on the northeast horizon. That way, you whisper. The elder nods. Good. Not because it's right, he adds, but because you trusted the water. The canoe adjusts course. No one questions your direction. For hours, you glide forward. The wind warm, the ocean smooth. It's astonishing how natural it feels, this rhythm between body and world. You're no longer trying to wreck the sea. You're part of its grammar now. As the sun sinks, the elder begins to speak again, his voice low and thoughtful. You know, he says, there was a time when people thought this knowledge was gone, when they told us we needed compasses and radios to find home. But the ocean remembers even when people forget. He gestures toward the stars, emerging in the dusk. Now new voyagers sail again, descendants of those who thought the road had vanished. They rebuild canoes, sing the old songs, follow the same winds. They call it the Renaissance, but the sea just calls it returning. A mainstream historical fact slides perfectly into the moment. In 1976, the double-hulled canoe Hokulea completed her maiden voyage from Hawaii to Tahiti, guided solely by traditional wayfinding under Maupie'Luag's tutelage. That journey sparked a movement, a revival of Polynesian navigation that continues across the Pacific today, blending ancient practice with modern understanding. The elder smiles faintly, as if remembering it himself. I sailed with their children once, he says. They used GPS to record the stars, then turned it off to see if they still could. Kalani laughs. And could they? Of course, he says. The stars were waiting. He tells you how these modern navigators now teach in schools, how entire communities gather to build canoes by hand, how the Hokulea has circumnavigated the globe, carrying not just people, but a message of stewardship, that the ocean is not what separates us, he says, but what connects us. The apprentices listen in silence. You can hear pride in the elder's tone, but also something deeper. A quiet reassurance, a sense that history has come full circle. Then comes a quirky tidbit. Apparently, when Hokulea visited New York Harbor during her world voyage, the crew joked that the skyscrapers looked like islands that forgot how to float. You laugh aloud, picturing a canoe gliding between buildings as bewildered commuters sip coffee on shore. The elder chuckles too. It's good to laugh, he says. Even serious journeys need smiles. The night deepens. The stars are so sharp, they look etched into glass. You can trace familiar ones easily now. Hokulea, Sirius, the Southern Cross. Friends, not teachers. You whisper their names like old neighbors you wave to on your morning walk. Historians still argue how these navigational renaissances spread so quickly, whether through cultural pride, academic collaboration, or sheer longing. But the elder's explanation is simpler. The sea wanted to be heard again, and she chose good listeners. Kalani hums a tune, the same song from your first voyage, but slower, steadier. Others join in, the melody soft against the sound of waves. It feels like a continuation of Mao's chant, a handoff across generations, passed by breath. At midnight, you notice faint lightning flashing far away, too distant to hear. The elder points. Heat lightning, he says. The world reminding us it still has a pulse. You think about all the people who have crossed these waters, the ancestors, the explorers, the dreamers, the teachers. The line between them blurs. You realize you're part of that same pulse now. You, who began this story barely able to tell north from breakfast, are now sitting under stars older than memory, steering through a sea that feels like home. When dawn comes, the ocean blushes pale pink, the horizon smooth as silk. The crew begins to stir. Kalani stretches and grins. Your direction worked, she says, pointing ahead. There, faint but unmistakable, lies land. A low green curve just waking under the sunrise. The elder claps your shoulder gently. The sea kept her promise, he says. And so did you. You exhale slowly, realizing you've been holding your breath for most of the night. The land ahead grows clearer, its edges defined by golden light. Birds wheel above it, the first sign of shore. The elder raises his voice for everyone to hear. This is the new way, he declares. Not because it is different, but because it remembers. As the crew cheers softly, the canoe glides onward. Every paddle stroke an echo of ancestors, every ripple a signature of return. You look down at the water, seeing your reflection broken by light and motion. For a heartbeat, it feels like the sea is smiling back. The modern world may have forgotten for a time. But here, under these stars, in this rhythm, it all still lives. The knowledge, the grace, the humor, the patience. The ocean, after all, never forgot your name. The coastline ahead unfurls slowly, like a sleeping creature stretching beneath the morning sun. The air is softer here, warm with salt and blooming flowers. You can hear waves breaking against a coral shelf in slow, steady applause. As the canoe nears shore, the crew falls silent, letting the ocean make the only sound. You're returning to the same kind of beach where this long story began. Yet everything feels different. You've crossed centuries, met voices living and gone, learned to read what can't be written. The elder sits beside you, calm and quiet, his hands resting on the rail. Home isn't a place, he says. It's a circle you sail until you remember where you started. The canoes glide into the shallows. Sand scrapes the hulls with a sigh. The ocean's way of saying goodbye without really letting go. The apprentices jump out first, laughing as they steady the boats. Kalani turns to help you disembark, her grin wide and wind-blown. You look like you've grown gills, she teases. You laugh, and she's right. You feel half seawater by now. The elder remains seated for a moment, staring at the horizon. When he finally stands, his movements are slow but sure. The sea gave us back in one piece, he murmurs. We should thank her properly. He stoops, picks up a handful of wet sand, and lets it fall through his fingers. Everyone follows suit. You do too, watching grains slide away like time. The group forms a loose circle on the beach. The elder begins a final chant. A simple one, softer than all the others. No rhythm of command or direction, only gratitude. It tells the ocean thank you for carrying. The stars thank you for speaking, and the wind thank you for keeping everyone awake. You hum along, low and steady. A mainstream historical fact settles naturally here. When modern Polynesian voyagers end a journey, they often hold a hanbomeka, a blessing of safe return. It's less about triumph than humility, a reminder that no one ever truly conquers the sea. They just visit it for a while, and the sea decides if they may leave. The chant fades, leaving only waves and breathing. Then the elder turns to you. You've listened well, he says. You've seen how small we are, and how large our knowing can be. That's the whole secret. He smiles gently. Now you'll dream in the language of waves, whether you want to or not. Kalani chuckles. It's true, she says. You'll wake up every time a car splashes through rain and think the tide's calling you. You grin. I can live with that. As everyone unpacks, you wander down the beach alone. The sea stretches out like polished glass, its edge melting into sky. You crouch, trail your hand through the foam, and whisper a small goodbye. The water answers with a ripple that runs along your fingers. one last secret handshake. Historians still argue whether navigation revived because of culture, pride, or sheer stubborn love. But standing here, you think it doesn't matter. What endures isn't argument but rhythm, the pulse that connects paddles to stars, people to places, breath to the long inhale of the sea. The elder joins you one last time. Remember this, he says quietly. When you can't find your way, don't search harder. Sit still. Let the world move around you until you recognize its song. You nod, like the navigator who stayed still and let the islands move. His smile widens. Exactly. You both watch as the sun dips low. Birds trace arcs overhead, heading inland for roost. The tide creeps closer, licking at your footprints until they disappear. You realize that's what all voyaging is. A series of vanishing footprints, each erased so the next traveler can write their own. Behind you, the apprentices laugh as they roast fish over the fire. Someone begins humming that same tune from your first night. The song that stored the sea. You recognize its rhythm instantly. It sounds older now, deeper, but it's still home. You close your eyes and breathe it in. Salt, smoke, fruit, the faint metallic tang of ocean spray. The elder's voice softens. That's enough learning for one lifetime. Now, just listen. You do. The surf hushes. The chant dents into a murmur, then fades entirely. The wind slows its dance, each gust turning tender, almost shy. You feel the sand cooling beneath you, each grain heavy with the day's warmth. The last glow of sunset lingers on the waves, rippling gold that turns, by slow degrees, to silver. The stars appear, one by one, tiny lanterns relit for the night shift. You recognize their paths now, but you no longer need to name them. It's enough to see them, to feel the space between. You imagine them blinking back, quietly approving. The ocean exhales, a long sigh that seems to stretch across the entire planet. The tide rises, not to reclaim, but to cradle. Your eyelids grow heavy. The elder's voice drifts over you, barely more than a whisper. Rest now. The road is still there when you wake. You lie back on the sand, the surf whispering against your ears like breath. The smell of rain returns faintly, carried from somewhere far away. The world grows soft, edges fading. You think of canoes breathing, of birds leading the way, of stars teaching patience. You think of every voyager who ever looked at this same sky and felt both lost and found. And as the sea hums her final lullaby, you surrender to it, floating not on water but on memory. The sound of waves becomes your heartbeat. The heartbeat becomes sleep. For a moment you're certain you can still hear Mao's voice, the elder's laughter, Kalani's hum, all of it blending into the eternal rhythm of the Pacific. Then the horizon dissolves into dreamlight, and you drift quietly home. The sea is calm now. The stars above no longer instruct. They simply keep watch. You feel their gaze like a soft hand resting on your chest, steady and kind. Around you, the world has gentled, each sound a whisper, each movement a lull. The waves roll in slow, sleepy breaths, their edges glimmering faintly under the moon. If you listen closely, you can still hear the ocean's language beneath everything, the subtle rhythm that guided your journey from beginning to end. It's the same sound that beats inside you now, quieter but certain, ancient as time. Let it wash over you, that rhythm. Let it carry away whatever noise you brought here. The day's worries, the half-finished thoughts, the endless lists waiting for morning. None of it matters out here. Out here, the only to-do is to breathe. In through the tide, out with the wind. The sand beneath you holds the warmth of memory. The air smells of salt and night-blooming flowers. Far off, a single wave curls and breaks, its sound trailing like the last word of a prayer. You are still, and the world moves gently around you, just as the elders said it would. There's nothing left to find, nothing left to prove. Only this, the ocean's steady heartbeat, the stars' patient glow, the quiet certainty that you are safe and small and infinite all at once. The sea hums one final note, and you hum back without meaning to. Your breath slows, your body loosens. Sleep arrives like a tide coming home. The voyage continues, softly, in your dreams. Sweet dreams.